So let's say you, anyone in the audience, are on a public school board and you get a message on Facebook from a parent demanding that the book Genderqueer be removed from the school, to the school library, because pornographic content does not belong in schools. This is the message. This message makes your heart race, okay? Because in this scenario, because you've personally learned so much from this book when you read it. You also believe that parents and not schools should monitor what their children read. And you hate conflict. How do you react to this?
So for those of you listening at home, we agreed that I would take the lead on this one. So here I go. First of all, the third thing, I hate conflict. And back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, I don't have to engage with this person. I'm just reminding myself that I do have a choice. If this is going to cause unreasonable anxiety for me, I can simply remember this was a message on Facebook. I can say, thank you for your comment. Thanks for reaching out. And I don't have to engage further. Me personally, if I do muster up the courage to engage further with this person, I would invite them to a conversation, either by phone or in person. And now that might stop the conversation right there. Back to my opening comment about cowardice. You know, I hate to say it, but in my experience, just taking an online comment or conversation and then turning it to, would it be okay if I called you about this right now? Or could we meet sometime in the next couple days about this? I won't hear anything else from that person. We'll be done. And in my mind, in my way of thinking, if we're done at that moment, that's fine with me, because I have no energy to converse with somebody in writing, and especially in the case where I don't know them or they might be an alias. I don't, I can't stand investing my emotional energy in talking with somebody who's not being straight with me in terms of their identity. I have no patience for that. So I would try to invite them to a conversation. Well, that's an interesting comment. I'd like to learn more about that. Could we have a phone conversation? Or could I be willing to meet with you if you'd like to share more of your thoughts with this, about this with me, something like that. And I would be genuine, even though I have a strong opinion that this book should not be banned. I want to be genuine about learning why they feel the way they do. I'd like to learn more about that. That's a genuine statement. That's not a trap. I'm not trying to bait you and then slam you. I genuinely want to know, why is it that you think this book should be banned? Because I've learned that this kind of thing is a golden opportunity for me to learn. It's for me to learn about what drives people who think differently than I do. And the more I learn, the more I can, to be blunt, the more I can combat that. And the more that I can, work to my own advantage, the more I know about my enemy. I sound like a general espousing war tactics, but if you're at war, and some of us feel that we are, learning all we can about the motivation of our adversary is not a bad thing. But no matter the reason, I genuinely want to learn. And I would meet, if I had to meet, I would meet in a public place. And meet where there's food, or things that remind us that we're human. If I talk on the phone, I would start with the weather or something else about the school, right, that we have in common. Did you see the play last night? Isn't our football team doing great? Begin the conversation with things that I know that we have in common. And from there, adopt a position of curiosity. I feel like I've talked too long. I want to stop, but I just want to offer this phrase. I can be curious about your beliefs without having to change my beliefs. And it's so helpful for me to keep that in mind.
I was just going to mention that, I had an experience here in the library where I had a grandparent come in and say to me, she was concerned about this a series called The Suicide Squad, and she was angry and said this does not belong anywhere in the library. You should not have this book. And so we went into my office, we sat down, we talked, and in the course of conversation, I realized that she mentioned that her granddaughter had tried to commit suicide. So clearly, what she was reacting to was something very different than what I was reacting to. So we talked, and at the end, as in Craig's example, we talked about other things. We talked about things in the community here, and we agreed to disagree. Fast forward 7 or 8 months, the same lady knocked on my door and said, "Can I chat with you for a quick minute?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "I just wanted to tell you, I realize now what it was you were saying. I don't want to ban books, and I don't think that that's a good idea." And and we talked some more about it. And she said, "I'm kind of embarrassed." I said, "I don't think you should be embarrassed, because you were a grandma worried about your kid." I mean, sometimes that's the motivation, and it's not about a bigger issue.
I appreciate you sharing some of your tactics, Craig, because I think that's one thing that I've struggled with is I'm confronted with a situation and then I'm like, okay, but now what do I do? And I think inviting somebody in and then meeting in a public place, people behave very differently behind a keyboard than they do behind across a table from you.
Mhm.
And I just love that. Yeah, get a bite to eat together. Go for a walk through a public space and find something you can both appreciate. And that's an amazing platform to start from. And I just love that, building a toolbox of strategies to address concerns and have these hard conversations. So I'm gonna put that one in my toolbox, because I think often I don't work in a library anymore, but you're behind the desk. And so there's that barrier where someone comes to talk to you, and whether it is truly a barrier or not, it looks like one. And so removing that and finding a place where you can be together and talk is a great suggestion.
I also like what you said, Craig, about sort of getting to know their points and why they disagree with you. And I wish I had taken debate class in high school. I teach a section of citizenship at my job now, and one of the activities the students do is a debate. And they learn so much. Sometimes students have to go on the team with the point of view that they don't align with, but they have to study those points of view, and they always wind up coming back and saying, wow, I really understand a lot better now why folks feel this way, but they were on the side they didn't originally want to take. So I feel like they almost learn more than the students who are debating for the point they believe in. So I wish every student had to take debate class.
I think anytime you can bring the conversation to just two people and take away a bigger audience, it's going to be a more productive and civil conversation. Facebook, it doesn't, whether it's a private message on Facebook or whether it's posted in a group on Facebook, they're not just speaking with you. And they're not speaking with you at all. They're speaking at you and
Yes.
To a wider audience.
Heather, I remember your opening comment was about that. A trend that you've seen is more towards grandstanding. And this happens on social media, and this can happen also in public places, in a public meeting, where really the person is not talking to me at all. They're talking in front of a bunch of other people. And I'm just a vehicle, I just happen to be the convenient target that they get to use to show off in front of other people, but really their message is not for me. And if I can recognize that and not buy into that and not provide a continuing platform for that, I'm doing a good service.
One thing that I hear all of you saying is, if somebody is coming with an extreme opinion, you're not countering with an extreme response, right? You're taking it in smaller steps. You're kind of setting the pace. You're resetting how this conversation is going to go, and it's an interesting strategy, right? Because you're de-escalating in a way by doing that. And we had a question come in that I think is an interesting one, because you're all addressing extreme opinions. But do you have strategies or things to add to the toolkit when the information that is coming at you is disinformation, so false information? How do you address that?
With accurate information, to the best of my knowledge. I
Like a
would
librarian.
I would counter that and ask the person where they came across this information, what led them to believe that, establish my credibility, and well, I work as a librarian, and if it's a topic I know about, of course, and this is my area of specialty, and here's my understanding of the topic, and this is where I've been pulling this information from. So sort of establishing credibility, understanding their point of view, and then giving factual evidence if I have it, or maybe I don't, because I don't know everything, but I'm going to look into that a little bit more and let me see what I can come up with. Or there's definitely room. We don't want to be giving microphones to misinformation.
It's also a fine line between misinformation and point of view. And I think that, you can look at a variety of facts from many different perspectives. And so sometimes even just trying to find out where this came from and under what circumstances they found it, can help. Librarians really like to be able to give you a chapter and verse about where you've gotten your information from, and look for solid core resources. But that's not always how people will come to you. And explaining what librarians like to do sometimes helps a little bit.
Another thing, as hard as it might be, is to give such a person some credibility and validate their comment. I can understand how you might think that way. A lot of people have developed that belief. You know what I mean? Give them a break. Let them know that you don't think of them as a bad person just because they got something wrong. And then, lean in with Sonya's approach. But here's what I've learned. But I have learned time and time again that to have any hope of a good relationship with my adversary or convincing my adversary, I first have to build credibility. I first have to show them that I'm actually not their enemy, that I value them as a person, and I can see why they would believe that, whether I know it to be true or not.